theatricality and deception. Powerful agents to the uninitiated, but we are initiated.
I'm super excited!
You are now traveling through time and space. You unlock a door to another dimension. But not just any dimension, a particular dimension unlike any other. A dimension full of lies, cover-ups, and deception. A dimension that is all too familiar. A deja vu of brainwashing thoughts and questionable censorship. A constant struggle of power controlled by money and careless greed. A secret, if you will. A world within a dimension full of secrets, corruption, and murder. So well hidden that its foundation is the very roots of the dead. A dimension where conspired deception controls misinformation that spreads like wildfire. Bringing you to question your eyes, sanity, mind, and life itself. Welcome to the Deception Zone.
Around the same time that John D. Rockefeller seized U.S. media, he also hijacked U.S. medicine. When it was discovered that drugs could be produced from petroleum, America's top oil mogul ordered his army of propagandists to invert reality accordingly. Medicines used for thousands of years were suddenly classified as alternative, while the new, petroleum-based, highly addictive, and patentable drugs were declared the gold standard. After buying a German pharmaceutical company that manufactured chemicals of war for Adolf Hitler, Rockefeller leveraged his political influence by pressing Congress to declare natural healing modalities unscientific quackery. Rockefeller then took control of the American Medical Association and began offering massive grants to top medical schools under the mandate that only his approved curriculum be taught. Any mention of the healing powers of herbs, plants, and diet was erased from most medical textbooks. Doctors and professors who objected to Rockefeller's plan were crucified by the media, removed from the AMA, and stripped of their license to teach and practice medicine. Those who dared to speak out were arrested and jailed. When evidence began to emerge that petroleum-based medicines were causing cancer, Mr. Rockefeller founded the American Cancer Society, through which he suppressed that information. John D. Rockefeller is duly credited as the founder of the pharmaceutical industry, and the reason that medical error is currently the third leading cause of death in America. This is not an indictment against doctors. More than anyone, they are under the stranglehold of the single largest lobbying power in Washington. Every year, the pharmaceutical industry spends at least twice the amount as big oil to influence laws, policies, and public perception. Thanks to Mr. Rockefeller, the architect of American monopolies, no industry has more power over our lives than Big Pharma.
When I realized that this is not some accident, it's the food that they think is the same is not the same anymore. You know, everybody's for free choice. Whether we're liberal or whether we're conservative, we've all got that streak in us. But the fact is, you cannot have free choice unless you have an informed choice. And you can't have an informed choice if they're lying about what's on the label. What about PAM cooking spray? Everybody knows what PAM is. It's some kind of little healthy oil with compressed air that you spray it and it gets on your pan. It's not compressed air. And they don't tell you, but it's butane and propane. People don't understand that they are spraying lighter fluid on their children's hot cakes, and it's fabulously successful. But we can sue their pants off.
Next time you see this plant in your backyard, don't cut it down, because this is the best natural painkiller you'll ever find. Some people even compare it to morphine. This common plant is called wild lettuce and was commonly used by Native Americans 2 centuries ago for both food and medicine. So today I'm going to show you how to make a simple wild lettuce extract to keep in your medicine cabinet and use whenever you need it. Now if you take a leaf or stem and squeeze it, you'll see a white substance coming out. This is where the potency of the plant lies. Because of this white juice, the early European settlers also called it opium lettuce. This milky substance doesn't contain any opiates, but it's working on the central nervous system directly to lessen the feeling of pain. Nowadays, many people are turning their attention back to this lost knowledge and use it as a replacement for addictive prescription pain medicines. So let's avert our gaze from our modern survival thinking for just a bit and look at how our great-grandparents did it 150 years ago. This is exactly the kind of information I found in this 350-page book called The Lost Ways. This is probably the only survival book I've actually enjoyed reading. You won't believe how many survival things we've lost to history. I found the wild lettuce on page 113 and decided to make my own painkiller. I collected about 50 leaves today and washed them thoroughly. So the first thing you should do is grind them up in a blender, not very thinly and only just for a few seconds. Place the ground leaves into a wide pot and add just enough water to cover them. Now place the pot on the stove on low heat for 30 minutes. Do not let it boil because you'll destroy all the good stuff in it. Stir every 15 minutes until the water reaches a dark brown color, just like this. Now pour the substance while still hot into another pot through a strainer. Almost none or very little plant material should get through it. Use as much water as you can while the plant is in the strainer. This solution contains all the core elements of wild lettuce, especially the pain-killing essence. But it's not concentrated enough yet. So in order to obtain this essence, you should warm it over low heat again until the water is vaporized, basically dehydrating the solution until it becomes a paste like this. Be careful at the end when there is little water left. You should not burn the extract at the bottom of the pot. What you should have now here is pure wild lettuce extract. You can pour it in a small glass container like this and put it in your medicine cabinet for later use when you'll need it. Wild lettuce is unscheduled by the FDA, meaning it's legal to grow, own, and forage without prescription or license.
A very good book, folks. It's available on Amazon. Let me warn you, it's not cheap, but it's worth every penny.
The death dumps, otherwise known as chemical trails, are being dropped and sprayed throughout the United States, in England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Europe, and I have personally seen them not only in the United States, but in Mexico and Canada. Birds are dying around the world. Fish are dying by the hundreds of thousands around the world. This is genocide. This is poison. This is murder by the United Nations. This element within our society that's doing this must be stopped. I happen to know of 2 of the locations where the airplanes are that dump this crap on us. 4 of the planes are out of the Air National Guard, Lincoln, Nebraska, and the other planes are out of Fort Sill, Oklahoma. I personally have observed the planes that were standing still in Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, at the Air National Guard. They have no markings on them. They're huge, bomber-like airplanes with no markings. This is a crime. Crime against humanity, crime against America, crime against the citizens of this great country. They must be stopped. What is wrong with Congress? This has an effect on their population and their people and their friends and their relatives and themselves. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with the pilots who are flying these airplanes? They're dumping this crap, this poison, on their own families. Somebody has to do something about it. Somebody in Congress has to step forward and stop it now. Thank you. I'm Ted Gunderson.
with what MSG is. It's monosodium glutamate. It is a neurotoxin. What is a neurotoxin?
A neurotoxin is a substance that will stimulate brain cells to the point of killing them. When applied enough to receptors, the neurons die.
While they're doing that, they cause headaches, migraines, learning disabilities, Lou Gehrig's disease, list goes on and on. So why is this in food?
Because the industry that sells it makes a lot of money from the product. If you have a product that has some MSG in it, your product is going to be more flavorful.
And they've gone to great lengths to hide that. I found MSG hidden among many different labels. Can you give us some of the things that they use to hide MSG?
The hydrolyzed protein products.
Okay.
So you'll see hydrolyzed pea protein or hydrolyzed corn protein, hydrolyzed whey proteins, autolyzed yeast, yeast extract, sodium caseinate, maltodextrin.
Some of these foods, I mean, live with them every single day, and they have horrible things in them.
So she said, sure, and she sent me as her property rights advisor. It's called the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. I would call this the infomercial for the World Economic Forum. You can find them on YouTube. So they're not talking to you all. In that meeting that I attended at Cargill, the headquarters of the largest cattle traders in the world, in Wichita, Kansas, at their headquarters where I walked in, and they had 20 or 30 by 30 signs, sustainable beef, just off of where they're making fake meat and testing that, the largest cattle trader in the world. In there, in that room of that meeting, were all policymakers, state representatives, federal representatives. The governor of Kansas was there. They had these two big screens of other states where they had sister meetings going on at the same time. It was the second meeting that I had attended. So where is our food going to come from? Anybody take a guess? Besides bugs, that's for the poor folk. Africa. That's going to be the new breadbasket of the world. The whole purpose of those meetings was to send money to Africa to keep China from getting in there, because that's where they're going to grow their cattle to eat their steaks while we're eating our fake meat grown in our kitchen counter and our bugs. So the second brochure that I have up here is of definitions for rural communities.
Didn't think it could possibly be true, but after receiving thousands of records and declassified reports from the Army, it's confirmed that during the Cold War, the United States military conducted secret tests on unsuspecting people in the city of St. Louis.
The Army's ultra-secret military experiments carried out in St. Louis and other cities during the 1950s and 60s.
This study was secretive for a reason. They didn't have volunteers stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll breathe zinc cadmium sulfide with radioactive particles.
These Army archive pictures show how the tests were done in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1960s. In Texas, planes were used to drop the chemical, but in St. Louis, the Army placed chemical sprayers on buildings and station wagons. City officials were kept in the dark about the tests. The Cold War cover story was that the Army was testing smoke screens to protect cities from a Russian attack. The greatest concentration of this compound was sprayed near the Pruitt-Igoe housing complex just south of downtown St. Louis. It was home to 10,000 low-income people, and an estimated 70% were under the age of 12. They all unknowingly inhaled this compound morning, noon, and night. The Army placed sprayers on this former Knights of Columbus building on Lindell and in Forest Park. Documents uncovered to date indicate the Army never conducted follow-up studies to see whether the compound caused long-term health issues.